What's up, everybody? I'm the Mangoose. You are awesome, and Overprime is having another closed beta test on April 29th, and this one is going to last for 11 days. If you have yet to try Overprime, I strongly encourage you to head on over to Steam and sign up. You're going to hear many people say that this isn't a MOBA and is nothing more than a hero brawler. However, my personal experience with the game is that while yes, it's faster paced than Paragon ever was, it's still a MOBA. You still need to farm minions, manage waves, and push objectives. While I'm not sure if everything will be the same as the last closed beta test that they held, I do want to offer a few tips to get people started. Go over the hero abilities so the changes don't take you off guard, and cover some quick general beta test information so you're fully prepared to assault the core. I also want to announce that Get Through Gaming is holding a maximum of 16 team Overprime tournament on May 7th. I'll have access to spectator mode during the tourney, so I'll be creating some content on the games. I'll have their Discord linked in the video description below and a pinned comment if you want to check out the tournament and sign up to play. Certainly send me any clips from the competition if you decide to participate and get some good games in. I'm very much against companies forcing a competitive scene, but I'm all in for like a grassroots community-led tournament for fun. Let's talk about the actual closed beta first, starting with system requirements. In order to run the game at the lowest settings, you'll need, at minimum, a 64-bit processor, a Windows 7 operating system, an i5 2.5GB processor, 4GB of RAM, UHD graphics, 750 DirectX 11, you can easily download that, and a broadband connection. I guess you could probably use a dial-up if you happen to be from 2003, but you'll also need 12 gigs of space and a DirectX compatible sound card. I'm not real sure what all that shit means. I can just tell you that I have a 1660 Ti and an i7 processor, and I could run Overprime on epic settings at 60 FPS, so that should give you probably a better idea of what you're going to need. They'll have 7 servers across the globe. I'll give you a little bit of time to look at that for a second, and a crap ton of different language options. You should also be aware that the date and time of release is for Korea, so it may be different for you. For example, in my time zone, Eastern Standard Time, the beta test starts on the 28th at 10 p.m. This caused some confusion in the last test, and it seemed that they ended things early when actually it was just a time zone thing. A few things you may need to keep in mind is that duo lane is indicated by a red line on the minimap, and there will be arrows guiding you to the correct lane. The prime spirit that you often hear me refer to as black buff spawns next to this lane. You want duo here so you can easily rotate over and take that buff, as it does give your entire team a damage boost and can most certainly decide a game. Killing the actual prime does not give you an automatic buff. You have to pick the orb up and carry it to the designated dunk location. You can drop the orb if someone else on your team is a more suitable carrier. Once you dunk the orb, the prime beast spawns mid lane and pushes towers for you. This thing also buffs heroes and minions in its indicated radius, so it's a good idea to stick close to it. Be aware of the side portals that go from offlane to duo. I often play support and gauge my plays according to where I see the enemy jungler on the map. Just because you see them in the offlane doesn't mean they won't be in your lane soon. Your basic abilities are all unlocked at level 1, but you still need to level them up throughout the game. Choose what you put your levels into wisely. There's a lot of play potential around the bushes and the shadow wells. Be wary of the bushes. People like to hide in them and make you think the lane is empty, and then they bum rush you. Check bushes with abilities, wards, or basics, not your face. Starter items have secondary effects that can benefit your role. ADC, mid lane, and offlane items have a blink. Support items allow ward placement, and jungle starters have a smite. Unless you're just leaving the fountain, you must activate travel mode. I spent the first day of the first beta test just completely forgetting to activate this shit, but it'll soon become second nature to you. Now for the hero kits. I'll use both the original and Overprime names for each hero, but I'll exclusively refer to abilities by their Overprime names, with one exception. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know what the exception is. I also want to caution that anything and everything is subject to change, so the abilities in the upcoming closed beta test may differ. We'll start off with Revenant, aka Shade. He's a pretty unique ADC that can be built for precision basic attacks if you can aim well, or high ability damage if you can position well. His Q, Storm of Bullets, fires multiple rounds out of his mouth that targets enemies in range, and it targets them randomly, so they'll spread out amongst a hero and the minions, if, for example, if you try and target a hero in the middle of a minion wave. This is a lock-on ability that can pass through terrain. If you can isolate an enemy so that they take all of the bullets to the face, this will deal some serious damage. His E is Vital Wound. This is also a lock-on ability that deals critical damage and marks the target for extra damage from Revenant, and they get slowed. This also increases the amount of damage received from Storm of Bullets. Revenant has an odd right click. His pistol holds 4 rounds and needs to be reloaded before you can fire again. The 4th round deals extra damage. Attack speed will decrease the amount of time spent in the reload animation, and Storm of Bullets will automatically reload your pistol. His ultimate is Abysmal Prison. This will place you and your target in a completely separate dimension. If you kill your opponent, you receive an increased bounty. This ultimate is very good for isolating someone during a team fight and making sure you get the full effect of Storm of Bullets. Kallari, aka Kayla, she's a high-risk, high-reward assassin that deals very high basic attack damage. Her Q, Faded Light, puts you in stealth mode. If you hit someone from behind while stealth, you automatically crit. And then they crit their pants. Her E is Twilight Guide. This is a lock-on movement ability. If the target is marked, they are rooted by the damage dealt. This is a huge change from Paragon. This ambush style ability replaces Kallari's triple jump. Right mouse is called Brand. You throw a dagger at people that deals damage and marks the target. You can see the little bleeding heart that pops up over their head. Marked enemies explode for extra damage when attacked. In Paragon, the dagger would slow, but in Overprime, you get this mark thing going on. Kallari's ultimate is Evil Vow. You lock yourself and your target down, stunning them and slashing for a large amount of damage. The changes Overprime has made to Kallari have forced her to be played less hit and run and more all in, like you better kill them or you're gonna die kind of hero. Muriel, aka Ira, I don't know how to say that. She's a shielding support with a global ultimate. Her Q, Final Judgment, places an AoE that increases allies' movement speed while slowing enemies. I didn't play much Muriel in my Paragon days, but I'm pretty damn sure she didn't have anything like this, and I enjoyed this ability. Her E, Glowing Light, throws a bubble on the ground that explodes after a short duration, dealing damage to enemies and shielding allies. If you use Glowing Light on an enemy that's inside Final Judgment, they immediately take damage and are stunned. Her right click, Glory of Assign, can be used on an ally to give them a shield. This used to also grant movement speed in Paragon, but I think they removed that in Overprime. Her ultimate is Faithful Vow. This is a global ultimate that allows Muriel to fly to an ally, shielding them on the way and dealing damage and an AoE knock-up when she lands. Muriel is a solid support in Overprime, and global ultimates will always be leveraged by good players to turn team fights around. FaZe, aka Cynthia. FaZe was a support in Paragon, however Overprime has geared her more towards a damage caster. Her Q is Flash Burst. This deals damage and blinds in an area around you and the linked enemy. Blinded enemies don't have a completely blacked out screen like they did in Paragon, it just gets real blurry. Her E is Light Flux. This is a channeled beam that deals ticks of damage and slows. Hit people with enough ticks of the damage and it applies a root. Her RMB is Synchronizer. This links you to an enemy and drains mana. Reactivating this pulls your enemy towards you. This is a huge change from Paragon, where you could link to allies and give them health and mana with the option to pull them to safety. Her ultimate is Supercharge. This is a high damage AoE knockback around FaZe and her linked enemy. FaZe is a hero that is going to really fuck with para-refugee minds. We're all very used to playing her as a support, but she's actually a pretty damn good mage in Overprime. Just ask JPie, he fucking loved her. Murdoch, aka Scud. He's a pretty standard ADC with a global ultimate. Lots of changes to his kit, so perk up Murdoch fans. His Q, Target Check, is a lock-on ability that fires a burst of rockets. This looks and functions a lot like Revenant's Hail of Bullets, but the rockets get blocked by terrain, so you can negate them by cutting around an outcropping or dropping down a ledge. His E is Commence Bombardment. You kneel down and start lobbing long-range grenades. You have to be really accurate to hit with these. Completely new skill that no one had in Paragon. His right mouse button is Shock Bullet. This knocks people back and deals damage. Works great as a pseudo escape. His ultimate is Long Dong of the Law. I will always use my own name for that, no matter what. This lets you fire a cross-map laser that deals damage. Overprime added several damaging abilities to Marok's kit, and I like it. He was kind of bland in Paragon, especially towards the end where he had mainly passive abilities. In Overprime, you can use your rockets to deal mid-range damage, take a knee and fire grenades if the enemy escapes, and hit them with a shock bullet if they get too close. Pretty well-rounded ADC. Rampage, aka Tarak, a very tanky jungler that rewards players who can master his rock throw. His Q, Savage Heave, lets you pull a boulder out of the ground. Reactivating this will hurl the boulder, dealing damage and stunning enemies. You can throw this thing for fucking ever too, it's nice. In Overprime, you can pull the old school Paragon strat of just holding the boulder like a briefcase to force people back via sheer intimidation. His E is Earthquake Smash. You pound the ground twice, dealing damage and slowing enemies. His R&B is Menacing Arrival. You leap to a targeted location and deal AoE damage. If you're holding the rock when you leap, you'll stun anyone caught in the effect. His R is The Liberated. You grow in size, gaining significant health regen, and your rock throw becomes instant. Rampage is a really fun jungler that deals significant damage while still being fairly tanky. His ultimate allows you to sustain yourself through all kinds of damage. Even towers are really no match for Rampage. If you've never played Rampage, he's a really fun hero, and hitting long-range rock throws is probably the most satisfying thing in the game. Gideon, aka Cosmos. He's a burst mage with a very disruptive AoE ultimate. His Q is Summon Meteor. You call down a meteor that deals AoE damage. His E is Open Subspace. Create a portal to teleport yourself to a targeted location. Allies can also take this portal, giving this ability a bit of team utility. His R&B is Distortion. This deals AoE damage and pulls targets towards the center of the ability. This isn't something that he had in Paragon, however early trailers for the game showed him doing exactly this. His ultimate is Devour. You deal damage in a very large AoE and pull enemies towards the center. From my experience in Overprime, this deals jack shit for damage, but it's still extremely disruptive in team fights. Gideon plays much like he did in Paragon, however, instead of his ultimate being the huge damage in piece of a team combo, this is now the starter that sets up the rest of your team to clean up. Feng Miao, aka Tao. He's a solid jungler or solo laner with high mobility and good self-sustain. His Q is Auspicious Spirit, this just gives you a shield. His E is Spear of Dawn, you deal AoE damage that slows enemies. R&B is Great Leap, you dash forward to a targeted location and deal damage to any enemies that you hit. In Paragon, this would stop if you hit someone. In Overprime, you just shoot right through them. His ultimate is Strong Determination. This is a frontal line AoE that deals damage. Enemies under a certain health threshold will be executed. They get a small indicator when they're within execute range. Feng Miao plays much like he did in Paragon. You stay on top of people by slowing them or dashing to them if they use movement abilities, and use your shielding to just outlast your opponent. Grux, aka Uruk, the Uruk-hai. He's a solid jungle or solo lane option that brings great damage and crowd control. His Q, Primal Grip, deals damage in a cone in front of you and pulls enemies towards Grux. His E, Unrivaled Momentum, lets you charge through and deal damage to enemies. His R&B is Rage. This performs a quick double chop with your clubs. In Paragon, this would apply a bleed, but it doesn't in Overprime. His ultimate is Fury of the Great Chieftain. Slam your clubs together, stunning enemies in an AoE, and gain physical power. Grux is a great option if you like to be the one that starts fights. His pull is great for setting up multiple enemies for kills, and he can follow up his own initiates with a ton of damage. Sevarog, aka Demorius. He's a late game oriented tank that stacks souls throughout the match to gain power and health. His Q is Soul Steal. This is a short frontal point of origin AoE that deals damage. If you last hit with this ability, you gain soul stacks. Soul stacks give you increased damage on the ability, and it gives you extra health. Sevarog has several milestones to achieve with these stacks that will give him bonus damage and health. This is indicated by his shoulders growing and becoming spikier. His E is Hollow Breath. This is an AoE that deals damage and roots enemies. His R&B is Into the Dark. You dash forward through any units in your way. His ultimate is Deadly Declaration. You swing your hammer in an arc, dealing damage and knocking enemies back. Sevarog is a fairly high skill cap hero since early game you have to be really patient and last hit with your Q ability and you start off relatively weak. But if you're able to do that, you'll be an unstoppable monster in the late game. Lieutenant Bellica, aka Valora. She's a combo mage that also provides great team utility through her stuns and mana sap. Her Q is Ground Collapse. This is a long-range line of damage that knocks enemies up. Her E is Commander's Eye. This is a destroyable drone that steals mana in a large area. It's supposed to fire at people that use abilities in its area, but that doesn't seem to be working here. Her R&B is Suppress. This places a bomb that detonates after a short delay and it deals damage. Her ultimate is Paralyzing Shot. This is a lock-on that deals single target damage. The damage is increased based on the enemy's missing mana. While this does deal significant damage, don't expect it to hit like it does in this example video. She's 5 levels up on that Gideon. One thing I noticed in the last closed beta test is that people didn't combo their abilities with Belly. Put your drone down to start sapping mana, and when they're distracted by trying to kill it, hit them with the ground slam, put a bomb under them, and then cap it all off with her ultimate. If someone survives all that, they're going to be low enough that they're going to have to go back to base. Twin Blast, aka Colt. He's a highly mobile, quick-firing ADC. His Q, Burn to Ashes, fires off a grenade that deals AoE damage and applies a slow. This holds multiple charges. His E, Boost Mobility, lets you dash in whatever direction you want. This will also refresh a grenade charge. His R&B is No Mercy. This is a quick triple tap with your pistols that deals reduced damage. It can crit though. His ultimate is Equilibrium. This is his original Paragon ultimate that allows you to quickly fire off a series of shots that knocks enemies back. Twin Blast is my preferred ADC when I absolutely have to play the role. His mobility lets newer players escape when they position poorly, while his R&B and dash let experienced players just really outplay their opponents. Sparrow, aka Evelyn. She's the very definition of what people expect from an ADC. A weak early game due to a lack of an escape, but her scaling is off the charts so she can melt teams late game. Her Q, Rain of Arrows, is a persistent AoE that deals small ticks of damage. In Overprime, this slows enemies. Her E, Swift Arrow, lets you increase your movement and attack speed for a short duration. Her R&B is Focus. Charge up your arrow for a long-range snipe that passes through terrain. Her ultimate is Hail of Arrows. You fire out a shotgun blast of piercing arrows for a short period of time that deals damage in a cone. The center shots deal more damage. Sparrow is incredibly fun to play, and if your allies set you up well, you can destroy enemy teams late game with her ultimate. Just be sure to activate her E before you ult so you get that attack speed while shotgunning arrows through your enemies. Kwang, aka Han, he's a durable jungler or solo laner that will end multiple targets with his high damage pseudo-global ultimate. His Q is Rumble. You throw your sword to a location and tether enemies caught in the AoE damage. His E, Forestall, is a passive that gives him ability lifesteal. His right mouse button, Shimmering Brilliance, deals AoE damage around his sword, wherever that may be, in his hands or on the ground, and it gives Kwang a shield. His ultimate, Bloody Lightning Slash, is a high damage AoE sword swing. Using your ultimate will teleport you to your sword's location. This is why I call it a pseudo-global ultimate. You can leave your sword on the map somewhere, head back to base, and then just ult back to the sword, hopefully causing nearby enemies to shit themselves. Shinbi, aka Bora, my absolute favorite hero from the last beta test. She's a highly mobile melee mage. Her Q, Summon Phantom, throws a wolf towards your target that passes through enemies and deals damage. This also gives you a spirit stack. Hitting a hero with this refunds some mana and decreases the cooldown. It's kind of like the phase Harvest Nettles. In Paragon, the wolf would always follow the ground, and Overprime, you could throw it straight up in the air if you want. Her E, Phantom Dance, creates a circle of wolves around you that deal damage and heal you for a portion of the damage dealt. This also applies spirit stacks. Her R&B, Light's Memory, is a quick dash that passes through and deals damage to enemies. This can be reactivated for a second dash if performed within a short time frame. This also gives spirit stacks. Her ultimate, Call of the Goddess, is a medium-range lock-on ability that consumes spirit stacks to summon wolves that attack your target. Shinbi's stacking and ultimate mechanic is very different in Overprime than it was in Paragon. In Paragon, the stacks were applied to your target, and you could activate your ultimate anywhere on the map to consume the stacks and deal damage. In Overprime, the stacks are a buff applied to you, which allows you to use your ultimate on anyone without having to hit them with abilities first. This is why it's a lock-on now. The game doesn't record the last person you hit with an ability, it records how many stacks you have. Also, you can only have 6 stacks at any one time. Shinbi is a very dangerous hero when played well. You have poke damage, mobility, and an AoE option that heals you. She's the total package. Countess, aka Beatrice, she's a high-risk, high-reward ability-based assassin. Her Q, Shadow Nipple, teleports to the target, dealing damage and slowing them. You can reactivate this for a short time to return to your original location. Her E, Blood Nipple, yes, I'm doing that on purpose, is a frontal point of origin AoE that deals high damage. Her R&B is Spin Slash, you spin around dealing AoE damage. This steals health if you execute with it. Her ultimate, Thirst, stuns a single target and inflicts a ton of damage. Countess is one of those heroes that's decent if you can keep her in check, but as soon as she gets a little bit ahead, she'll start deleting people. Finally, we have Steel, aka Scott Steele, Attorney at Law. By far my most played hero in the last closed beta, he's a tanky support that fares just as well in the jungle or solo lane. His Q, Advance, charges through enemies, knocking them up and dealing damage. His E, Ironclad Wall, creates a barrier that blocks projectiles and slows anyone that walks through it. Well, any enemies that walk through it. His R&B is Shield Bash. You bonk enemies with your shield, dealing damage and applying a slow. This was a stun in Paragon, it's just a slow in Overprime. His ultimate, Unstoppable Power, lets you leap to an area, dealing damage and knocking enemies up in a very large AoE. Steel felt really good in the last test. He was tanky enough late game that I can initiate team fights and still stay in there to knock people around, block projectiles, and slow people. Your goal as a tank support isn't always to live through an encounter. It's always nice if you can, of course, but if you could be a huge damage-soaking disruption and trade yourself for 3 enemies, then job well done. I think that's about it as far as quick tips to get you going in Overprime. Be sure to sign up for the test on Steam and check out the Get Through Gaming Discord if you're interested in the tournament. If you want more content about all of the Paragon remakes, please consider subscribing. Like the video if you enjoyed it, but for now this is the Mangoose signing off. You guys have a good one. Mangoose! Special shout out to channel members Foolish Bloodhunter, Jelly Knees, Meow Mix for Men, Stunt, Ferrith, and Raven.